Hey, all right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking a moment out of your busy day to join us for Beyond the CMS, our slightly rebranded podcast where we talk about everything to do with content and beyond. And I'm just super stoked to get into this with Pardeep here because finally we've got a Canadian company joining us here live. Just a shout out to the team that's producing the show. Natalie's behind the scenes helping manage all the socials. But the idea here is that we have this great moment in time to have Pardeep from Agility CMS joining us. And it's really an opportunity to ask us anything. We'll do our best to get some answers. And we modeled the show after the NPR show called The Car Guys, where you just call in with things not going right with your car, and somehow these two dudes come up with the answers. But we really encourage questions, and there's a lot going on, obviously, with AI and how that's impacting everything, and we're going to get into all of that. The idea here is if you do have a question, throw it into any of the channels that you're tuning in on. We'll do our best to answer them. Sometimes I forget. But if I do, we'll get back to any unanswered questions on the social channels. But let's get right into this. Super warm welcome, Pardeep. Thanks for joining us. Really cool. I know you're traveling right now as well. So super thankful you made some time for us. You want to introduce yourself and Agility and just kind of give us the high level of what you're doing and what Agility's up to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first off, I'd say, Chris, thanks for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, I am traveling. I'm just coming back from a conference. I'm in a little cubicle. Hopefully the sound is great in the lounge. But yeah, Pardeep Koonar, I head up partnerships here at Agility CMS. And so, I look at a few different things on partnerships. We can get into that. But really, who is and what is Agility CMS? Let's start there. So Agility really has been around for a better part of 20 years. In the early days, the company was founded and built around building websites, right? So, and they did that quite successfully for many years. But I think as the years progressed, the delivery mechanism on websites became more challenging. And so the company created an API first approach on delivering websites. And this is something that they used internally before CMS was even a thing. And somewhere along the lines, call it 2010 or 12, don't quote me on that, the organization realized that they had a real software here that could be sold separately. And so for a while, the organization kept its development arm and its effectively SaaS application. But cooler heads prevailed in terms of which way the business wanted to go from a modeling perspective, and we sold off the implementation arm of our business and solely focused on what is a content management system or a SaaS application that we deliver out of the cloud, and all our focus and all our time is spent in delivering that.
Awesome, and we've been building on Agility for as long as you just mentioned, over must be about 20 years. I think you used to be called Identity, and you guys were Headless before Headless was a thing, and it was
That's right.
such a beautiful system, and it really allowed us as a digital shop to create, develop, deploy digital products super fast. And I don't know if you mentioned in passing there this idea of headless. But I really want to get into that right away. This concept of headless and composable architecture, which is why we love your product. But the folks listening in are often CMOs, and they've got a million things to do. And a use case is they get tasked with a website redesign, modernization, migration. They have to, they're considering new platforms, and some of the terminology that we use isn't necessarily translatable easily. So from a non-technical perspective, are you cool just chatting a little bit about what is composable and headless?
Yeah, sure. And I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I come from a telecoms industry where a lot of back office orchestration happens, whether that's delivering voice and getting phone numbers into different systems. And what very quickly was a learning within that industry is how how do we build something and it not be a monolithic thing that when I go to update that thing or want to change, for lack of a technical term, the tire on a car, it's not a giant overhaul. So when we think about headless in the CMS space or the content management space, and thinking about the marketing groups, it's that ability to make a change on a website or a series of websites or applications without the need of having developmental intervention. You don't have to create a ticket. You don't need to go and make those changes through a change management process, right? So what we do really is if we think about this from first principles, we empower the content creators to do everything that they need to do in their job to keep marketing efforts moving forward. And part of that is the website and the ability to deliver content across website structures. So what I mean by that is you may have multiple sites, you may have multiple language sites, you may have different regions, geographies. How do I get a unified way to publish content? And do I need to go to each one of those sites to make those updates? And the answer is no. A CMS can handle that. Now, in going back to your question about a headless architecture, gone are the days, well, they're going away. I think the industry is really catching on to this, but gone are the days where you build a website and all of your integrations are really sort of like bolted on and you have this one monolithic type of website, and getting content across all those paradigms is difficult. And so what a headless architecture does in a composable space is allow end customers to pick and choose the solutions they need to compose the solution that they want and need to deliver to their end users, their customer base out in the marketplace.
I love it. And that's hard even for us as an agency to kind of communicate the value of kind of this headless composable idea. That leads me to thinking about the concept of the MACH alliance and how that fits into composability. And I've had some feedback from our customers when we're introducing these ideas. They're a bit confused about what that all means, but I realize that maybe it's been just over a year or two, but I know you're part of that group. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, so the MACH Alliance is a really forward-thinking organization and alliance of companies, and these companies are composable companies. So, for example, if you're going through a digital transformation and you're looking at, well, we need to revamp our website, but there's a piece of the overall solution that isn't working, where do I start? And what MACH Alliance really talks about is you can change one of those components as part of your overall solution. And I'll get to that in just a moment, but MACH Alliance itself is forward thinking in that it's bringing all these companies together and it's highlighting wins in the marketplace and how we're delivering transformation across the industry through a composable architecture and showing a high degree of cost savings, adaptability and flexibility for end customers. And so the MACH Alliance really highlights those organizations that ascribe to this composability. I think what's happening across the board is more and more organizations are understanding that this is the way to go from a flexibility, affordability perspective and a time to market perspective. And MACH really encapsulates that and really highlights it. For us to be part of MACH is super important in that we are recognized that it's not just something that you sign up to, you have to pass some gates. Mm-hmm. And so we're recognized as a composable architecture delivering into this MACH ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, it really is important. It's really where our industry focuses its lens on key wins and use cases that can be applied across all industry.
When you talk about integrations and having a composable architecture, like what are some of those integrations? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I was talking about earlier, I can get into the example, right? So you're a large organization or even a small organization. You're looking to transform, but you have a pain point that is driving that transformation. So for example, it could be something like the payment structure you have off your website. Mm-hmm. So think about a large organization that is an inventory company that, think like an eBay or a Overstock or something like that. Well, how do I get SKUs, through the payment transaction system, and how do I do that efficiently and effectively? So in the old days, or not even the old days, we have companies out there that have large ERP systems, and when you're on their website, you're actually navigating their ERP system. And the challenge with this, it can become very slow. It can become really constricting on how flexible you are in new SKUs, new products, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of companies that want to move away from that. And the way that they are choosing is to choose a composable commerce tool, and that being the driver for the transformation and to solve that pain point. And what that leads them down the path is, for every site, you do need a content management system. And so you may start with something like Commerce or your cart or something else. It might even be how you search your website. Now with AI, we'll get into that in just a moment. You may want to have a search capability that is much more AI centric, agentic, than a standard just indexing database type of search, right? So that's what composability is, and that's hopefully some of those examples kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, really awesome. And one of our use cases is just that search. So we typically, or in the past, we would integrate a search tool like, I don't know, Algolia, let's say. I think there's actually a starter kit that comes out of the box with Agility that makes connecting these two systems easier. But the example would be, now that AI is performing all this kind of conversational search, well, we don't need to rebuild the website or to choose a whole different infrastructure tool. We simply swap out maybe traditional search for AI search, or maybe even test both and get some feedback from customers and figure out what works best for them. So yeah, just to summarize that, this idea of composability allows you to kind of, like Lego in a way, connect all kinds of different systems together for your final output, let's say.
Yeah, I think the other piece to that is I like to talk about the flexibility of it, in that you're future-proofing what you're doing, in that, AI is moving at such a breakneck pace. What you have today may not be what you want tomorrow. And so the ability to pull out, a solution without changing the whole car, so to speak, you're changing the tire. That ability to do that seamlessly and efficiently is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Key and unique feature of today's chat is you're Canadian. And, in the past, let's just say an American company choosing a Canadian agency, or like, it didn't really matter if it was where the platform was, where the data was sitting. But do you want to talk about some of the benefits that I think our listeners would want to understand about why considering a Canadian platform is so important these days?
Well, yeah, I mean, given the political backdrop that we're in, the dynamic that we're in today, being Canadian is becoming ever more important, and you see it across consumer households that are looking for Canadian products to invest in. And so what we found is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're the only end-to-end fully baked CMS system out of Canada. Meaning there are some niche players, but we provide the full gamut, and I'll get into that in just a moment. And as a result, we're seeing a lot more interest and demand coming in from Canadian clients and Canadian partners alike. And one of the things that we've really done well is via our cloud infrastructure and the way that we deliver our solution is we can provide data sovereignty for any data that's stored within our tool to be within Canada and not leave Canada. Mm-hmm. And, for all intents and purposes, we can do that in any country. But because we can do that, and we have that sort of security guarantee and overlay, we find Canadian companies are really latching onto that.
Cool. Just taking a moment to thank everyone for taking time in their day to tune into what we're saying here. And we're fairly unscripted, and I think that's part of the beauty of the show. I want to just get to a question here. can't see anymore. From Natalie, how do you see new breakthroughs in AI evolving in the landscape, specifically around this headless content idea?
Yeah, this is a really good and big question because we could probably spend the whole time talking about this.
Yeah.
I think almost every industry and product is facing the question about what does AI solve for us, and how do we implement it, and more importantly, how can we monetize it, right? And so we have a roadmap about what we're doing around AI. There is some, I like to call it low-hanging fruit that AI provides for, and the challenge of just looking at the low-hanging fruit is it's sort of table stakes. And what I mean by that is the ability to refresh your content like you do in your email, transcribing maybe a call like this. That, I think, that's been done. Has been going on for some years now, but it's finding those niche use cases that really make life easier for end customers and users. And so for us, within a content management platform, we really are looking at this in a much more driven and strategic way, in how can we actually help our users utilize our tool. So one such example is, a lot of folks, and I can tell you people on our marketing team, that they start their content in Microsoft Word, right? Like a lot of people would, they might start, typing a bunch of things. Well, when you come into the content management platform, you need to create a model, and you need to then, publish that content out to the websites that you want to, or can AI solve that for you and take that unstructured content and turn it into structured content? So we're looking at solutions like that. Obviously, search being the easy one, where through whether we build it organically or use a partner, using AI to be able to search all the content that might be in your DAM and come up with responses through agentic sort of conversations, and potentially, because we're composable, integrate to back office systems to actually perform workflows. So the question about AI is probably never endless. Now, we've already built some AI on the development side of, the ability to integrate on the front end back to our CMS. And so that will continue, and we'll see that grow.
You just triggered a whole stream of conversation around this. It's a great way for me to give a shout out from a developer agency perspective. Agility, as far as I know, is in our partner ecosystem, is the only partner with an open Slack channel. I had a conversation on Slack randomly with Joel, the CTO over there, and I was thinking, I got an idea where we're agentifying over here at Dotfusion, and we took a look at where do we spend the most time in delivering a digital product, and it's around content modeling and connecting components to the system. I'm like, hey, dude, what if we had an agent over at Dotfusion that spoke to the Agility agent? We gave it some Figma files, it created the models, the controls inside, and we'd save half our time. And he's like, great idea. Okay, cool. I take that seriously. Let's talk about getting this going. So as much as we speak to the CMOs and marketing people and authors, Agility is amazing to develop on, just the speed to market to get things done and to sandboxing it around is super cool. I've got a question here, Pardeep, for you. What's the biggest hurdle to convincing organizations to switch from a traditional CMS, maybe AEM, Drupal, WordPress kind of thing, where you're kind of coupled together, to Agility?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there's a few, right? One is just traditional thinking, being a bit of a blocker, but beyond that, I think there is a level of brand recognition that a CMO may be playing the safe card to stay with, say Adobe or one of the other tools that you mentioned, and so that ends up being a bit of a hurdle. I think the other thing that I'm solving through partnerships is the CMS is one piece of the puzzle, right? We've talked about search, we've talked about personalization. I think we mentioned it, and there's a few others that would round out a full website for a customer. And so if you're hesitant or resident to manage multiple contracts, that might be a source of friction. And so in some of those cases, you'll see decisions going the way of a monolithic DXP. But I mean, once we have those conversations with those CMOs or those decision makers, and we start looking at what the future looks like, what the transformation goals are, and ultimately, how quickly they want to get to market, they very quickly realize that a composable architecture is the way to go.
You just touched on a hot topic over here, which is this concept of the total cost of ownership. And we're usually the immediate interface with the customer. And inevitably, they want us to get back to them with a budget for the next 3 years and how they can factor in these composable tools. And I think there's some real advantages of choosing Agility just for that reason. Do you want to talk a little bit about just the great support you have to partners and customers around figuring out what is this going to cost?
Yeah, I mean, without doing a side-by-side comparison, and certainly I can take that offline, our pricing from a licensing perspective is really a fraction of the cost when you compare it to some of those larger DXPs. So that's one thing, but we deliver this as a service. So there's no hosting cost. All of your assets that are stored in Agility are part of the service. And that comes with future-proofing the service with updates and things like that. And I'll get into that in just a moment, from service, support and all the rest, right? And those are really key when you're looking at the total cost of ownership. But more importantly, if you're making a decision about CMS or not CMS, we're one sliver of the pie. But if you don't have a need for a bunch of other things, what's really great about a headless and composable solution is you can just pick and choose the things that you need. So it might just be search and a CMS, and away you go. And it's lightweight, and you can add to it when you have those needs come up in the future. And I think that is really key when we're looking at total cost of ownership.
Yeah, awesome. And that's been really helpful to us to bring people onto the Agility experience. And frankly, once folks are using Agility, and thanks to you guys, I think you were one of the first partners to provide like a sandbox, and you really engage with helping us educate our customers too, as they kind of want to get familiar with what's the experience for authors. And I know you have a great kind of design studio that makes that all easy to use. Do you want to talk about some of your customers maybe, and whatever you're at liberty to talk about? But I know you're powering some larger enterprise customers, and I think that's really important for folks to know that you've been here for a while, you're secure and compliant, and you're powering a lot of the websites that the folks listening in see today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these are public, recorded companies, so I can speak to them. Some of them being very large and Canadian, such as Scotiabank or Cineplex. Certainly, we have a host of companies that we've worked with, and I think some of these niches have just come out of need from the marketplace. I know we've got a few customers that are real estate organizations that have very specific needs, like Interweb or Westman, a few of these. Maybe you can speak to them, Chris, the projects that we've done out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, one of our recent deliverables was a really beautiful new kind of modernization for Westman Communications, kind of in the telco space. But the beauty is you're satisfying all industries, from manufacturing to, I think there's a hockey organization in all of this somewhere. We can probably talk a little bit about the Leafs at some point in time, a bit off topic. But something else that's really important to us as a partner of yours is the investment Agility has made in partnerships. And I know that's your role. Do you want to talk a little bit about partnerships and where that whole industry is trending? And for any organizations that are looking to adopt Agility in-house, that's really important.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So yeah, I mean, I've come on board to head up partnerships at Agility, which was, in a bit of an unstructured path. We were working with partners for many years, but not in a really formal programmatic way. And so one of the things that I've been doing and putting in place is a partner program. And so I'm responsible both for development agency partners, but also for technology partners. And so this is where I think a lot of my time has spent and will be continued to spend in that the market's shifting, right? Like organizations are looking for ecosystems. They're looking for turnkey solutions that can provide real value rather than, little bits and pieces to solve parts of a pain point. And so the net result is I'm looking at some really great technology partners to bring in-house. We've already done, you mentioned Algolia already. We've already done a lot of integrations. And so what does that mean to the end customer? That means that when they choose Agility, having a host of other integrations at the ready, so they have flexibility and the ability to choose rather than be locked in is really key. And so that ability to accelerate their path to an end solution, but also give them an ecosystem of players that work well in the sandbox.
Yeah, and for us, the value of the partnership is the communication. We're always up to date. There's a great knowledge base, and we feel really close to the product. Like we were part of its growth as well. Man, time goes by a little bit on the quick side.
Yeah.
I'd love to wind this down a little bit and just talk about what is the future. Whatever you can share with what Agility is doing. I've got some thoughts on where the web itself is going in branded experience. And we talked a little bit about this before the show. Like, is a website even a thing in 2 years? Like what, what are your thoughts in the big picture?
That's a really good thing. Just before I get there was something you touched that made me jog on something just about agility. And I wanted to highlight two things that we do really, really well compared to our competitors. Number one, you said that you've worked with us providing feedback and product functionality. That, I think for us, there's two major things that we do really well. We are a people first organization in that with our partners and our end customers, there's not one person that you can't get in touch with to have conversations to solve problems or to future-proof what we're doing, right? And that is very different from our competitive space. So we're very high touch. The other thing is our product. We've really evolved this over really 20 years, and we still have our ear to the ground to the customer. So I'll give you an example. Even just last week, we released an image optimization tool. So the ability that a user doesn't have to upload 5 different sizings and renderings of an image. You can actually just do this in Agility. You can pick a focal point, and you can have one model that can be reutilized in different methods. So that's just something that was being asked from the customer base. I want to use it as an example, but we're always iterating and listening to the customer. Now, going back to your original question about where's the web going? I mean, AI is really driving this. There's no question. And I think we have sort of a theory or a thought process. I think we're in alignment when we were talking before, in that I think what's going to happen is, in the headless space, the AI becomes the head, and it becomes the aggregator of creating experiences. And the idea of a website being this static thing that gets updated from time to time may go away. And you may have a very personalized journey in that when you ask an AI agent, it composes and pulls together all the content that sits behind the scenes and gives you a personalized view of what that looks like. I think we're early days on that, but I don't know, Chris, your thoughts on it. But I see the AI being the head, for lack of a better term, and websites being a bit redundant.
Yeah, and we're just noodling over this too. Like, it seems that now that OpenAI has kind of given you the opportunity to have it remember everything that you've been chatting with it about, maybe that's where real personalization kicks in. And when I visit a site, it's kind of connecting my chat interface with Agility's, and it's controlling the rendering through AI models into whatever. It can generate a video that's tailored to me. It can point me to the products that I'm interested in. It really is aligned with our take on things, where content authors are really idea folks, and as long as it's on brand, and chat can refer to brand guidelines and produce anything at any time.
Yeah.
But we have no problem now, because we have all of our assets in Agility, and just kind of like what you're talking about, Headless, we just create a new head for it all.
That's right.
And it keeps everything cool and all in one place. We're just running out of time, but I did want to just say thanks to everyone for tuning in, because it's really cool to take a moment of your time to listen to a couple folks chat about things. Pardeep, is there anything you wanted to leave us with? We're going to put your contact information down below. You're a great representative of the company. I know there's a bunch of other people that are supporting you in Agility in general, but yeah, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, well, thank you for the time, and everyone who joined, thank you for joining. If you wanted to find out more about Agility, feel free to reach out there. My contact details will be there. Happy to have a discussion, whether it's just, noodling on where the future of AI is going, or if it's specifically a need that you have, I'd be happy to have a chat.
That's great. And if you wind up on the Dotfusion site and look at our case studies, like 90% of them are Agility builds, and all brands that you probably recognize. Also, just a shout out to Natalie and Cometa, who produced the show. You guys are awesome. Thanks for keeping things going and keeping me on track. Coming up in the next couple episodes, we're going to do a deep dive into kind of agentic tooling that really makes authoring workflows a lot more simple and interesting. So I think on that note, we're just a little over time. Safe travels. We can't wait till you get back to the city.
Yeah.
And thanks to everyone who joined in, and to the team supporting the show.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and talk to you soon.